We are live streaming.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is 4 o'clock. Now is the time set for the regular public board of directors meeting for the Arizona State Schools for the Deaf and the Blind. Thank you for joining us today. We are meeting again via Zoom. In terms of etiquette, the same as previous meetings. If you can keep your Zoom on mute and no video unless you'd like to speak, and then you can turn on your video and indicate by raising a hand or making some other visual indication that you would like to speak. I can recognize you then, and then we can take turns that way. Also, I remind everyone to wait just a bit for the interpreters to finish interpreting what you're saying. So there'll be some pauses at the end of every sentence, and that will keep everything flowing smoothly. So now we come to item 1.01, call to order and roll call. Suke, can you read the roll call?
Absolutely. Linda Bove.
Here.
Dean Howard.
Here.
President Nigro.
Present.
Mike Gordon. Mike Manley.
I'm here.
Mark Sims.
Here.
Myself is present, and then absent today is Shelley Herbold.
Lynn Davison is here.
Oh, sorry, Lynn.
That's okay. I can't get my video to work. I don't know what I'm.
Okay, great. Thank you, Suke. So it looks like Shelley and Mike Gordon are the ones that are not here today. We can move on to item 1.02, call to the public. Call to the public on agendized items. As we had done in the last meeting, we solicited public comments via an email address set up for that purpose, limited to 500 words or less. We received one email to be read as part of this meeting. Suke, if you can come on and read that email.
Certainly. The email is from Marcy Barenberg, and that's spelled B as in boy, A-R-E-N-B-U-R-G. And the subject is the school reopening. And the comments are as follows. I am concerned about the negligent stance ASDB has taken regarding schools. The state has met the metrics 2 weeks in a row, and we are anticipating a third week tomorrow, yet ASDB has yet to open and move the date further, even with strong trending. Many other districts are full-time, and those that aren't are at least meeting the needs of IEP students. Some teachers are choosing to use inaccessible programs, IEPs are out of compliance, and children's educational, language, and social needs are not being met. Classroom sizes are already below a typical classroom. We can socially distance with ease. We are fortunate to have large campuses that work well within the recommended parameters of this pandemic. Our cases are low, risk is low. Now is the time to get back to focusing on education and our students. It's time to open the school and allow our kids to thrive.
Thank you, Suke. Next on the agenda is item 1.03, information item, executive team reports. The reports were provided in the board book. Superintendent Reichman, are there any comments that you may have on this?
This is Annette speaking. I just want to let you know that in addition to the written report, the next item on the agenda under the assistant superintendent, we will have both Albert Duff and Paul Creasy providing a short presentation. So you will get a verbal report from those two individuals.
Okay. Excellent. Are there any questions among the board members for these individual reports? I don't see any. Is Albert Duff on the call now?
I am, sir.
Oh, hello. Just wanted to thank you again for your report, and thank you for the information that you provided regarding these IQ Air HEPA filters. Can you let me know where are these going to be deployed and how many we have?
So we purchased 2 of those, and they're going to be deployed in the student health centers. And so as students come to the student health center with any sort of symptom like for COVID, this would be used to make sure that if there was a COVID positive case, that it would be contained and the air would be scrubbed in the area that they were primarily housed before being transported or picked up by parents.
Okay, so in other words, these are going to be placed in areas where we believe there are going to be students that have either COVID or suspected COVID, so that we can keep the staff and the other students safer by cleaning the air in those areas, correct?
That is correct. And those are true HEPA filters. The filter on it's about 4 inches thick and is designed to work in hospital settings as well.
Okay. Great. Are there any plans to purchase more of these devices? I know that some of these are in short supply, but are there any plans to purchase more of them, put in other areas where there might be more traffic or more students together congregating in one area? Although I know we're limiting that as it is.
Yeah, the cost is fairly high on those, but looking at the CDC recommendations was primarily to increase airflow. And we've actually started that process and made sure that we're following the CDC guidelines for increasing outside airflow into all of our areas. And then our next step is actually looking at a different option rather than an air scrubber. It's actually looking at either UVC or different forms of ways of actually treating all of the air inside of our school buildings and all of our office buildings as well. So a little bit different in design because of the size. Those air scrubbers are kind of limited in the amount of air that they scrub of only about 2,500 square feet. So when we think of multiple classrooms and multiple areas and the noise that those make, it would be more conducive to actually change the HVAC system on the roof rather than inside the actual classroom.
Right, and that's from a long-term perspective, I understand that likely preferred. Can you tell me more about the UVC systems that you guys are looking at?
Sure, there's UVC, which is a way of actually killing the organics inside of the air, which then the virus has a hard time replicating without the correct amount or a substantial amount of organics inside the air. There's also ionization, which actually, or ozone machines, which actually clump molecular items together, and then it allows for the filtration system to actually take those items out of the air. So it actually increases the size of the particulate, so that way a standard MERV 8 would actually catch the virus.
Okay, and our filters, we use MERV 8 or do we use something higher right now?
Correct. We use a MERV 8 on all of our units, and that's because that's what the HVAC systems were designed to handle. So by using an ozone machine to actually increase the size of the particulate matter, it would actually make those effective for viruses as well as other contaminants.
Okay. And is there a time frame for when we might deploy one of the UVC systems?
Right now, we're in the quotation process. As you can imagine, pretty much every school is starting to gather these quotes. So we're still in that quotation process, unfortunately, and moving as quickly as we can to get that quote finalized. In the meantime, we still implemented the CDC guidelines of increasing outside airflow, which by doing that, actually, we've gone to about a 25% outside airflow or more in all of our buildings, which allows us to actually change out all of the air inside that building 4 times in an hour.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's great. And how are we doing that?
All of our units that are commercial grade units, they have an outside air damper. And so that damper up on the roof, you just merely open it up and that draws in more outside air as it cycles it through, and then it pushes inside air out. And commercial units, in order to avoid what's called sick building syndrome, which has been known since the 1970s, normally had about a 10% change. All that we had to do was increase the damper to about 25%. And then that met the ASHRAE or the HVAC guidelines from the CDC.
Okay, great. Well, that's great news to hear. I know as we are preparing to have students that are going to be together in, indoors, that we have a way to get clean, fresh air from the outside in there, and also to have other systems, either the UVC system or the HEPA system, to try to remove any droplets or aerosolized particles from the air that may carry COVID. So thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for your attention to these. I know it's HVAC is usually not top on our list, I think, but it's really important right now. So thank you for being on top of this.
It absolutely is. Thank you, sir.
Okay, if there's no other comments for 103, then we can move on, and I don't see any. We can move on to 104, information item, Assistant Superintendent Report, Dr. Rex. So Dr. Rex.
Good afternoon, President Nigro and ASDB board members. Today, my report has been submitted in writing, and I wanted to do something a little different today with Annette's permission. We are going to let you have some direct information from the principals as well as the directors who have been working all summer to prepare and make sure that our students are ready for school. But before I turn it over to those specific groups, I want to give you just a little bit of great news, not just good news, but great news. We have some preliminary information that we have been awarded what is called a COPS grant, C-O-P-S, COPS grant. It's a federal grant, highly competitive. As an administrator, I've applied for this grant in other districts off and on, and this is the first time that we've been awarded. And I'm very proud of the ASDB Tucson Campus School Safety Committee, along with Principal Creasy, in collaboration with IT and Business Services, the ODD grant writing expertise of Melissa DeVries, as well as Albert's input through facilities. They wrote a grant and requisitioned $400,000 to help support safety on the Tucson campus. This is a national grant, and we requested $400,000, and we have preliminarily heard back that we will be receiving about $360,000 in this grant. There is a 25% match on the agency's part, but only 160 grants were given to awarded to the schools nationally. And we are one of 2 in the state of Arizona that received this grant. So I wanted to give a little shout out to the ASDB campus and their school safety committee. That hard work that they worked last summer on has certainly paid off. And I look forward to bringing back more information on the specifics of what we can use that money for and what that grant was written for. But now I'd like to turn it over to Director Kendra Benedict for the Early Learning Program to give you an update of what's been going on, what has been accomplished, and how we are doing in our current reality.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you all today. Given the charge to share with you how the ELP is connecting with our families and our students, 3 things immediately came to mind. For without any one of them, what we do wouldn't be possible. That would be our community partners, our teachers, and our families. The ELP has long recognized the importance of community partnerships. We value our community partners and see them as an essential member of the ASDB ELP team. We know we are only as strong as our relationships, and never has this been more evident in the last 6 months, during which time we have brought in approximately $40,000 in grant funding to support our families and students. From a $3,000 donation from a church member in Tucson willed to our program, to over $1,000 worth of books from parents in the Birth to 3 program, to the parent of one of our former preschool students at PDSD who stepped up to assist us with technology needs as families in the Birth to 3 program continue to receive teleintervention services, to a $30,000 HRSA grant funding through the EAR Foundation that allowed for the immediate deployment of tablets to 105 families, 70 with SIM cards, right when schools closed last March. And then finally, to a $5,000 micro grant from the Communication Service for the Deaf out of Austin, and a $1,000 grant from ASL Love out of San Francisco, that together allowed us to support our ASDB families on the Navajo Nation as the COVID-19 crisis took its toll. And it's not over. The EAR Foundation is currently applying for a grant through the Association of Maternal and Child Health Programs that, if awarded, would lend additional financial support to go toward enhancing our existing teleintervention programs with better connectivity and larger screens for our families in the early intervention and deaf mentor programs. Our teachers. Shortly after schools closed last spring, I had mentioned to you in a board report that our teachers had come together in unprecedented fashion. I am so proud and happy to report that they continue to do so. The Tucson preschool team recently participated in a professional development opportunity online, during which they were asked about their hopes and fears and what is working and what could be improved regarding online learning. This is what one teacher had to say. This year has been my best year by far. The preschool team decided at the end of last year to create an environment that is positive and proactive, kind of take control versus being lost. We acquired 2 new teachers over the summer and have introduced them to our vision. We collaborate, talk, share, laugh, and we rely on each other. We have decided to work together and focus on creating an atmosphere that is kid-friendly. Yes, we have one-on-one sessions and work toward IEP goals individually with our kids, but our learning centers are child-based and fun. In the building, we do not vent, we problem solve. We enlisted our IAs to be teachers, and they work alongside us to create fun and safe places for our students. We only vent on walks outside the building and usually end up laughing our way back inside. This positive atmosphere has created a team. I am learning with my colleagues and building professional relationships for the first time in my 15-year career. Lastly, families and students. As early intervention providers, whether birth to 3 or preschool, We have the extraordinary privilege of families welcoming us into their lives so that we can better help them and their children and their children's early development. I think the following quote from the original Sky High Manual, a curriculum we use in early intervention, explains what we do well. I enter here with respect, for where I go is so sacred that few are ever invited in. They bid me enter not only their living room, but also their lives. They share their questions as well as their kitchen. They let me glimpse into the sanctuary where fears and damaged dreams are kept, and bid my heart to tug on the burdens that they will bear. Together we will laugh and be excited over a sound, a phrase, a response, yet sometimes we will shed tears in disappointment. This is not a solitary journey, but a shared odyssey of discovery. I cannot betray their trust. Moving from an in-person to an online instruction took a certain level of trust on everyone's part. Building trust virtually can be challenging, but with the patience and kindness of our families, the fortitude of our teachers, and support from colleagues, I strongly believe that that trust has been created. Families from across the state have expressed their gratitude to us for equipping them with the technology necessary to access their child's education, as well as for providing instructions in both English and Spanish on Google Classroom. In turn, I'd like to take a moment to thank our IT department, as well as all of our amazing ASL interpreters and Spanish translators. Without you, we would not be able to in turn help our families. So thank you. Thank you, community partners, ELP teachers, families, and ASDB colleagues. We appreciate you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kendra. And now I'm going to turn it over to Courtney Fritz and Kelly Creasy to give you an update, principal's report for our 2 schools.
Good afternoon, Board President Nigro, Superintendent Reichman, Assistant Superintendent Rex, and members of the board. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to review the report that Courtney and I submitted. This report is due several weeks before this meeting, so we wanted to take this opportunity to provide you with some updates to this information. As of today, only 1 student did not register on the Tucson campus and was dropped at the 10-day mark. The student's home district has been notified, and they worked closely with us to try and connect with that family, but unfortunately, we were unable to do so. In order to monitor student engagement, a team consisting of administration, counselors, and school secretaries meets to discuss any student that has been flagged as having attendance concerns. Someone from the team reaches out and connects with the family to offer support and assistance. Last week, we had 29 students that were identified as concerns. As of today, 26 of those have been resolved. These numbers fluctuate from week to week, and so this team is critical for staying on top of potential attendance issues.
And for the PDSD campus, just like what Kelly was sharing, we too have established the same systems and procedures in trying to reach out and really make sure that none of our students are falling through the cracks. Although this is something that we would do in normal circumstances, certainly there's a heightened level of concern and a little bit more legwork in trying to get in touch with some of our families, just because it has been such a long time since the school closure. So for our numbers here in Phoenix, we had 2 students that we were not able to register. We tried every contact that we had, emergency contact, phone number, address, you name it, any type of way that we knew how to contact with them. And unfortunately, we were just not able to reach those families. And we are unaware of whether they have moved or what their situation is. And just like what Kelly mentioned, once they hit that 10-day mark, they were dropped from enrollment. But of course, that does not mean that for either campus, they're completely off of our list. We're hoping and looking for signs and communications that one day they'll just kind of pop up and there they are, and we'll grab them and run as quick as we can to get them reestablished and set up on our campuses. As far as concerns with engagement, as Kelly mentioned, we have the same system here. And it's really to try to not only help us respond more in a prompt manner, but also to show parents and students that we have a whole team on our campus that are trying to support you, that are working through the challenges and offering solutions. And that's just been a real, I think, a positive thing that's happened. Although the concern is there, it's nice to see people coming together to help our students. So at the beginning of this week, we had 17 students that were listed on the spreadsheet as concerned. And as of today, 10 of those have been resolved. So we are still working on 7 of those from this week. And as Kelly mentioned, it's a fluctuation every week, and some of them do have a better week and then they go back into that concern category, or some had really strong start and starting to slow down a little bit. So the rhyme and reason are all across the board, but definitely something that we have a plan in place, we have a system established, and we are monitoring that daily to make sure that we continue to provide the support, answer concerns, come up with solutions together as a team. And in regards to the concerns, of course, that is in the digital learning environment. So at this time, we are continuing in the digital learning program. All schedules that have been established follow the recommended direct instructional recommendations from ADE through digital learning, as well as the total instructional minutes that are required for the various age groups. So the schedules have been established to make sure that all of those minutes are being met through the digital platform. All of the related services have reached out to the teachers first, and then reached out directly to parents to make sure that those direct IEP services are scheduled and are part of that child's program and are built into their school day. We are using our instructional assistants everywhere you look, everywhere you turn. So they are an integral part of being involved with the digital learning, and definitely helping us to provide that specialized instruction as being an additional set of eyes, set of hands, available for office hours, available for support. And so they're really helping us in a variety of ways. As an agency, we do have a team that has been meeting. We had our reopening committee, and now we've kind of shifted that to the school data committee. So we do have an agency group of individuals that meet every Friday morning to review the data, review the metrics, look at the benchmarks, not only as a county, but specific to individual zip codes as well. The state has done a nice job of providing a variety of reports that provide us a wealth of information and data. So we really come together every week, look at that information, and have discussions. Because we have students coming from all across the valley on my campus and all across the state on Kelly's campus, it's really important that we look at the bigger picture and look at those individual zip codes. It is different than a home school district that's only pulling students from one certain area. Based on our original plan, the next date where we will be making a decision is September 25th. The data is looking promising. We are very optimistic that we, as long as things continue on the same trajectory, that we will be ready to open in person on October 6th. In regards to student services, like we said, digital learning, another component that we did was we developed a protocol to bring students on campus when necessary. So that protocol follows CDC recommendations. We have a very clear step-by-step guide of what staff should do and what communications need to happen between them and the parents. So it really is case by case, but that allows us to move forward with evaluations that might need to happen in person, whether that's manipulatives, whether it's hands-on, whether it's physically getting up and moving with the guidance of the evaluator. The need is really to have the student in person. We do have a protocol for that. Another example might be the audiologist. Our audiologists typically provide support for hearing aids, cochlear implants, those type of devices. That is something that we can still do on campus if needed. And then the last example is technology. We did deploy technology to all of our students. Unfortunately, IT can't be in each of their homes. We can't have, an IT rep for each home, and we wish, that was possible, but IT has been great. I think Kendra mentioned that as well, of just providing any and all support, whether that's troubleshooting on the phone. I know Kelly and I have gotten on the phone and tried to troubleshoot. Again, really, truly a team effort. But if the need is to troubleshoot, that might be another reason why we would bring students onto campus. But that protocol is established and is communicated on a case-by-case basis, depending on the need.
In addition to the IT department, we have to really thank our transportation department, who has been absolutely phenomenal. On August 17th, they literally delivered materials statewide. Every student on both campuses received technology, any assistive technology, and educational materials. We still continue to deliver items through our transportation department and through the mail for students. So if they need additional materials, if we have to switch out a Chromebook, deliver a hotspot, our transportation department is on it and have been delivering those materials for us on a daily basis. Unfortunately, both campuses had to make the decision to cancel fall sports due to the delay in-person start date. We were concerned with the ability to adequately prepare our students for competition, and we thought it was in the best interest of our student athletes to cancel. We are hoping to resume our athletic programs when we return to in-person learning. And finally, for the Tucson campus, we currently have 13 students living in our dorm. This option was offered to parents of dorm students who did not have access to reliable internet and for whom we were fairly certain that a hotspot would not remedy that situation. We are currently using 3 out of our 5 dorms to house these students, and everything is going really well. Huge thank you to our dorm staff that is providing that support for those students to engage in online learning.
So moving forward, we know that COVID is not going away tomorrow. Unfortunately, I think everyone on this call and everyone across the world would probably wish that would happen. But moving forward, although, like I said, the data is looking promising and we're optimistic, we do know that for a variety of reasons, there are some families that are going to want to continue on the digital platform and digital mode of learning. So over the past several weeks, we've been working on a plan to make sure we can provide both in-person when we are safe to reopen, and for those families and students that want that option, as well as continuing with the digital platform and being able to do both of those simultaneously. Although it is a challenging task and really having to look at all of the staff and how we can continue to commit to providing that specialized instruction through both modes of learning, it is something that we are moving forward with. So in our written report, we provided we took most of the document that was shared with parents. I think we removed some of the content that wouldn't be applicable in this setting, but really that document was communicated and was sent home to parents that really outlined digital learning as an option. We provided questions and some critical components that we felt families should consider and think about prior to making the choice of whether they wanted to continue with digital learning or have their student return in person. That has been, like I said, sent home to parents, and we will be sending it home to parents again with our progress reports. The original date we asked parents to respond by was the end of August. We have now pushed that date back to September 25th. So again, giving them a little bit more time to make that decision for their family and for their child, depending on what their circumstances might be. That will allow us approximately 1 week, a little bit more than 1 week, to prepare those individual classrooms and individual teachers to be prepared to provide both in-person and digital learning simultaneously. Once we have that information from the parents, like I said, we'll move forward with the logistics of how to set that up. But what we do know is that the accessibility piece is huge. for our deaf, hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired students, we want to make sure when they're joining in from home and through video that they're able to clearly see the teacher that might be using American Sign Language, and or clearly hear the teacher if they're using spoken English, to make sure that that accessibility piece is what each of those students will need. Additional classwork and support will still continue through Google Classroom as it has been up until this point, from when we started on August 17th. As I mentioned, we did have an initial due date, and we've since extended that. So from the initial due date, currently the numbers are there's 27 students from the Phoenix campus that want to continue with the digital learning option, and there are 4 students from the Tucson campus. So that's kind of our next step and our next phase in looking at what those numbers look like in preparation for running both programs simultaneously starting in October. We know that there was a lot of information in our report and a lot of information that we tried to update you with this evening. So at this time, we'd like to open it up if there's any questions for either of us.
Hi, this is Mike. So I don't have any questions, but thank you very much for that presentation. It was very informative, and I appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you. And I was just going to add that it seemed like there weren't any questions. So we both want to thank you. Thank you for your support. You know, we are both fully aware these are challenging times in education, and especially education for deaf, hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired students. Kelly and I meet every single day at 8 a.m. And I think early on we thought there's going to get to a point where we don't have anything else to talk about. But we haven't gotten to that point yet. We both have a list every day at 8 a.m. So the positive to all of this is I think it's really strengthened our consistency and aligning our programs, our philosophies, and our approach to educating our students on both of our campuses. So that's definitely been a bright light, a shining star in all of this COVID. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your support.
This is Lynn. I do have a question. If there is an outbreak on either campus, we do have a plan.
We do have a plan. All of the devices that are currently deployed to students will remain assigned to them for the entire school year. So if we had to close, those devices will go back home with the students. So everything is being maintained in Google Classroom as well, so that we can quickly turn around really the next day and move right back into online learning if we need to.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. And now I think we're going to move into our statewide director for itinerant services. Jay has had the opportunity / challenge of having itinerant teachers that are still working remotely, going into schools, and a blend of a lot of things that he is going to be sharing with you next.
Thank you, Dr. X, and thank you, board members, for allowing me to come in and speak with you for a few minutes about some of the work that we're doing throughout the co-ops statewide, as well as how we're supporting our partnering school districts and charters. First off and foremost, I want to let the board know that our focus has always been providing the best services possible to all students statewide. During the pandemic last spring, our goal was to deliver uninterrupted services as much as possible. And as the board knows, last spring, we were able to service about 85% of our population during the pandemic. And after partnering with some of our special education directors statewide and speaking with all of them, we found out that we were far beyond what they were able to do within their own school districts and charters. This goes back to our goal of putting students first. Part of that goal is building additional partnerships and strengthening partnerships statewide and throughout the nation. One of those partnerships that we're working on right now is with vocational rehabilitation. We're working hand in hand with 2 of our northern Arizona school districts to connect our VR team with our own co-op team and the school district teams to make sure that we're meeting the needs of students in each one of those districts. In addition to that work, we're also connecting our VR team members to each of our co-op directors and having them attend meetings to share information from VR, as well as providing information back to VR from ASDB. In addition to that partnership, we're also strengthening partnerships within Arizona and outside of Arizona with our state universities. We have individuals that are coming to us already looking to do student teaching, as well as internships throughout the state. We held informational meetings this year with special education directors statewide about our distance learning model and how we could partner with school districts and charters that we had not worked with in the past. Through all of this, it comes down to the services provided. We've wanted to make sure we're providing the best service possible, and the way that we're measuring that is by currently collecting data and providing support to staff to deliver services, but to accommodate students and families to individualize those services. The proudest moments I can tell you so far working with ASDB is about the collaboration, the communication, and the reporting that has standardized our work moving from phase 1 to phase 2. The focus this fall will be to continue to ensure the equity of all students and really to make sure that we're using data to drive decisions for all students in the co-ops. To end this verbal report, I wanted to share with you a story that will warm your heart. This comes to us from one of our O&M teachers, and I'll read the email that was sent to us. I've been working remotely and virtually with a student who is in a very rural high school throughout the hybrid O&M program. During his IEP meeting, the parents agreed to meet with me in an urban area, either in Phoenix or Tucson, 2 times this year in order to provide an immersion of actual application and practice of the concepts and skills the student has been learning through our online instructional sessions. This is awesome for 2 reasons. First, the student will be well prepared to know which street crossing strategies to use at various intersections, so that our time will be mostly spent to practice runs with much less time introducing and teaching the concepts and theories behind the skills. Secondly, it'll be greatly reduce the transportation and travel time expenses for the agency. Also, I just received permission to conduct an O&M assessment for a middle schooler. In this case, I will first work with the student online to start to develop relationships by gathering background information, current knowledge and understanding of O&M concepts and skills, and the insights to the approaches I may want to use when assessing the student in person. I'm excited about this process of figuring out how to conduct part of the O&M assessment through the remote platforms. This is one of many stories that we receive weekly from our team statewide. Each week, we share these stories out with the entire co-op team so we can see the strategies that we're using statewide to deliver services either remotely, in person, or a blended model. Again, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today, and I appreciate your support moving the co-ops from phase 1 to phase 2, and I look forward to the work that we'll be doing this fall. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jay. I think some of the themes you've been hearing is adaptability and tenacity on the part of our staff members. No one has given up. Everyone keeps pushing forward and adjusting. And you also, board members, have heard that this would not be possible without IT. So at this time, Paul, can you share a little information on how you have been able to deploy devices and make sure that we are able to provide the accessibility in our programs?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board President Nigro, Superintendent Reichman, Assistant Superintendent Rex, and members of the board. The IT department has been focusing on ensuring that our staff and students have the ability and the necessary tools for digital learning. We have inventoried, imaged, prepared, and sanitized computer equipment for assignment to staff and students. We have deployed 640 Chrome devices, 350 Windows laptops, 500 Windows desktops, and 485 tablets. We have procured and deployed 130 webcams to equip every classroom on both campuses so instructional staff can use their classroom computer for digital learning. We have also provided 45 cellular hotspots with internet filters that have been deployed to students without internet access. Every campus student has been assigned a device for the entire school year. This includes Chromebooks, iPads, and Braille Note touches. Students served by our regional cooperatives have been assigned devices by their home district or by ASDB. We have worked in close partnership with Lisa Yancarelli and her team to help with the deployment of assistive technology devices. We have worked successfully with 15 school districts and 1 charter school to connect itinerant teachers with the students that they are providing services to. We have procured 200 Google Voice licenses so teaching staff can communicate with parents and conduct agency business. This is more cost effective than acquiring a cell phone. We have successfully transitioned our web conferencing from WebEx to Zoom and Google Meets. Both platforms are much more student friendly and have also proven to be accessible on the devices such as Braille Note touches. The start of this school year has been unlike any other. In partnership with the campuses and the regional cooperatives, we have ensured that staff and students were ready for digital learning. Throughout the school year, the IT team will continue to provide support and address technology needs as they arise. I have provided you the IT department board report in your board packets, and I'd like to take this moment to make myself available for any questions you may have.
Hello, Paul.
Hello.
Thank you for your presentation. Just a question. I know we talked about the hotspot distribution. One, this is an excellent and large-scale deployment of technology. So I'm happy that we're able to get devices into the hands of our students so they can be supported during their the virtual education period. You talked about 45 virtual hotspots for those students that needed internet access. I know that we have students that have or live in areas that are a bit remote and may not have reliable LTE service. Do we have any kind of solution for them, or how have they been served in this period?
Yes. First of all, we recognize that cellular service is hit or miss in a lot of the outskirts of locations of the state. And in those situations, we have gone as far as to look for other types of support. And that means either contacting the local school districts, working with them to see if we can get them, our students on their wireless network if it's close by. We also have used state resources. There is a website, and I forget the name of it, but it's sponsored by one of the state agencies that collected a map of the state of Arizona and identified all the local public Wi-Fi access areas. Those are at schools, libraries, other public spots that the state is or others are allowing public free Wi-Fi. We have looked at resources with local ISPs, cable service providers, and anytime we've seen reduced cost or those types of specials that come up, we send the information out to our instructional staff to get into the hands of those parents that do not have access to Wi-Fi. And in some of those cases where specifically on our Tucson campus, I believe Kelly did refer that we have some of those parents made decisions if they didn't have internet access for their student to allow the student to come onto our campus in Tucson and stay in the dorms so that they can be able to get educational opportunities through that.
Okay, thank you. And you also mentioned the use of Google Voice in some cases. Is there any plans to move more of our telephony services to Google Voice?
Actually, at this point, this was one of those unique situations where in the past, we didn't really need to look that hard as far as getting cell phones to everybody. But because of COVID and everyone working from home, that was a unique situation that we had to deal with quickly. And since we were already a Google G Suite domain, we looked at that option because it gave us flexibility of being able to have staff forward their desk phones to this number and be able to access their voicemail and also use their computer, their Chromebook, using headsets and video conferencing to make calls if they had Wi-Fi. And so that is something we're looking at. Just recently, in October, I believe, there's going to be the new ASDB 3 contract, and we're really hopeful in that they will be providing more benefits for us as a state agency through soft phones, through Cisco. And so that's an option we're really looking forward to and seeing if that's something that would benefit us and give us improved flexibility.
Great. Yeah, I know a lot of the those IP phone IP phone solutions are typically a lot less expensive and they're more distributed and easier to use in a work from home setting or a remote setting. So I'm happy to hear that we're looking into some of those items because we're not necessarily going to be at our desks in person all the time soon or for the time being. Were there any other questions for the board members for any of these items? No, I don't see any hands. So thank you, Dr. Rex, and all who've spoken. We can now move on to.
I have one more.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yep. Okay. Oh, sorry, Dr. Rex.
We let Albert talk a little bit at the beginning, but I actually asked him to prepare something. So if you let him just finish up and then we'll be good.
Yes, of course. I apologize for that. Go ahead, Albert.
No problem, President Nigro. Good afternoon, Board President Nigro, Superintendent Reichman, Assistant Superintendent Rex, and members of the board. My name is Albert Duff, and I'd like to thank you for allowing me to take a moment to let you know about the current actions and accomplishments of the ASDB operations team. First, ASDB operations has been supporting the implementation of a mitigation plan for COVID-19. This includes prevention protocols in the form of administrative, engineering, and PPE controls. To reduce the likelihood of exposure on our campus and regional co-ops, we have sourced and begun to distribute PPE, cleaning supplies, barriers, and other recommended forms of protection, such as the air scrubbers for our student health centers. We are also going to supply our campus students and all staff who work directly with students with a clear face covering to help protect them while supporting their communication needs. With the addition of the safety coordinator, ASDB has begun partnering with Arizona State Risk Management to ensure that not only are we working on the current situation, but also reviewing and starting the process of implementing multiple safety programs within the agency. We will be communicating and partnering with all of our departments to make sure that every staff member is supporting a safety culture within ASDB. As of right now, during remote learning, ASDB operations team has come together to ensure that our students are being cared for and ready to learn. As Kelly already mentioned, this includes delivering needed material prior to school starting, including IT and classroom equipment throughout the state of Arizona. Second, we have begun delivering meals to our students to make sure they are all well nourished and ready for the school day. No different than as if they were on site. This includes cooking, boxing, and delivering over 1,600 meals a week in the Phoenix metro area and over 500 meals in the Tucson area. This also includes a weekly box offering for our students outside the metropolitan areas. This coordination and teamwork between transportation and food service is outstanding and shows what dedication ASDB operations has to the success of our students. While all of this is going on, the task of facility improvements has not stopped. On our PDSD campus, we have replaced the elementary school playground, flooring in the preschool, and now scheduling the replacement of flooring in 4 additional buildings. We're also starting the process of plumbing upgrades within the preschool on PDSD to accommodate for our little ones. On the Tucson campus, we have started the process of building a new science lab and scheduling the replacement of flooring in our elementary and middle school building. In addition, we have replaced over 50% of all of our food service equipment on both campuses to ensure that our food production is of high quality. ASDB fleet operations has been working towards right-sizing our fleet in partnership with the Arizona Department of Transportation and replaced over 25% of our antiquated light-duty fleet in fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21. In addition, we are starting the process of having ADOT manage all of our fleet maintenance and replacement. This will make sure that our fleet is up to date and well maintained, so our teachers and staff are able to reach students in every location throughout the state, providing an equitable use of resources. We're also adding GPS systems to all of our vehicles, and that's quite the change, so we can monitor where all of our fleet is throughout the state. As noted, ASDB operations is making sure that our current challenges are being met while looking towards the future. So we're dealing with the COVID pandemic, but also making sure that we're not falling behind on our other obligations, which is something that our team is doing a fantastic job of making sure that all of those things are being handled. And with that, I would like to say thank you for the time.
Thank you, Albert. And that completes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Rex. Now I think we can move on to item 1.05, information item, superintendent's report. Superintendent Reichman.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, President Negro, members of the board, Assistant Superintendent Rex, and the ASDB community. I'm happy to see you all here. As you have been hearing from our leadership team, we've all been focused on and working very hard on 2 very important goals. These goals are embedded in our mission statement, which are, first of all, to provide the best education and support possible to all of our students. And second is to ensure as much as we can the safety and well-being of our students and our staff. Those 2 are the most critical goals we are meeting during this time of the pandemic. At the last board meeting on July 23rd, you will recall we showed you a video, and that video showed our preparation and planning for students to come back on both campuses. At that time, we were planning for students to come back on August 18th. And if you recall, it was during that time be safe to have students come back to school districts, back to the campuses. The Arizona Department of Health Services established 3 metrics, and we've been using those metrics to make the decision on an ongoing basis as to when it would be safe for our students to come back to our 2 campuses. And as you know, at that time, we realized it wasn't going to be safe for students to come back on August 18th. So we made the decision to go ahead with online education starting on August 18th. And we've been providing online education. We're in our 4th week right now. You've heard from Principal Creasy and Principal Fritz about their work, their teachers' work, their professional staff work to give the best education possible online to these students. So with that, you've heard from the early learning program. We continue to provide early intervention to families with children with 0 to 3 that are 0 to 3. We are also, our preschools are providing online education similarly to the schools, with a lot of support from parents, of course. We're talking about children that are 3 to 5. Our itinerant services, as you heard, is providing online specialized instruction and support, and some in-person specialized instruction and support, depending on the student and the school district. So this has required a lot of creativity, a lot of changing and trying to figure out how to meet student needs. I was going to share with you 2 stories. One story I was stealing from Mr. Jay Johnson, but he already shared that story with you. The story about the student learning O&M instruction online and will be getting actual practice with his parents taking him to a city to learn. The second story I wanted to share with you is a student in an area with no cell phone reception, a deaf student. We were able to deliver a Chromebook to that student, and the student found a nearby school with Wi-Fi. So every day he's been getting on his ATV and driving to the school so that he can connect his Chromebook to the school's Wi-Fi and get his education from the Tucson campus. That is a really terrific example of when we provide the opportunity and the resource, the same time the student is motivated, we can successfully provide the online education, access to online education. While we've been addressing this very dynamic COVID pandemic environment, working very hard to meet the needs of our students. At the same time, we continued our work in what I call second order change. You remember it was a year ago in the fall, in the November board meeting, I shared with you that the agency was just beginning to engage in second order change. And at that time, I defined it as a systems change. A system change that is discontinuous, and is disruptive. Obviously, with the COVID pandemic, it's already been very disruptive. At the same time, in this time of disruption, we have continued to focus on the second order change. The other point that I want to kind of add to the second order change, when we implement a second order change, the only way we can maintain it is to also have a cultural shift. And our agency is right now going through a tremendous cultural shift. And what I mean by cultural shift is we are changing how we think, how we make decisions, how we plan for the future. We are using data to make decisions. You just heard some of our leadership team talk about data. So we're much more focused on what do we need to know? What data do we need to collect? Collecting the data, analyzing it, and then using that information to inform our decision-making process. Are we doing that 100% of the time? Not yet, but we're getting there. We're doing it much more often than just a year ago. The second piece that's happening now is we're engaged much more in planning. You've heard some from the leadership team about some of the plans that we have developed. And again, this is a real change in our thinking, that we are becoming much more proactive instead of reactive. We're thinking about the future and we're trying to plan contingency planning. If A doesn't happen, then B, and if B doesn't happen, then C. We're really trying to think through and plan for what may come. So, you heard our leadership team. So I have, depending on how long you want me to speak, I can go on for quite a bit. But for now, I'm going to just talk about 5 examples. The first example is last fall, ASDB set up a contract with LMA, which is a group in Tucson that does different kinds of research projects for school districts and other organizations. LMA has been working on a demographical study of ASDB enrollment trends. They've been looking at our historical data, and they're using that to predict the future enrollment trends. They're almost done with their research. They're writing the report right now. We hope to get the report, I think, sometime in October, maybe early November. They will be presenting to us, sharing their findings, and then training us on how to do our own demographical analysis in the future. That will help us with long-term planning. The second example is we just set up a contract with LMA, the same group, to do the first workforce analysis. And we're going to be focusing on related services personnel like physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech language pathologists, and so on. We want to take a look at their work in meeting the student needs. As you know, every student has an individualized education program. And in the IEP, it spells out what kind of services are needed, including the OT and the PT and the SLPs and others, so on. We want to know, are we meeting every IEP as written? Is our staff successful in meeting every IEP in terms of the kind of services provided and the amount of time that's provided? We also want to know, do we have sufficient professional staff to meet the student needs? Are we understaffed? Are we overstaffed? We really don't know. We don't have any data to tell us if we have the right staffing with the right skill sets and the right number that really meet the needs of our students. So that's the second thing that's happening right now. A third, fourth examples are, I think you heard about these two from the leadership team. One example is the digital learning plan. If you look at our ASDB web page, you will find our digital learning plan. And in that, it spells out what we are doing to provide digital online education to our students. The other plan, I think, is up on the web page now, is the risk mitigation plan. Mr. Duff just referenced that risk mitigation plan is for when our students come back on campus. We have protocols to keep our students safe and our staff safe as well. So those are planning documents that we have created and put up. I think final example I will share with you is that you heard from Mr. Johnson. He talked about itinerant services. Just want to remind you that it was, I think, a year ago that Dr. Sims suggested that we combine our 5 regional co-ops into one statewide delivery system. We are moving towards that goal. With Mr. Johnson starting last April, one of his first tasks was to look at how we can move forward with streamlining our regional cooperative services. July 1st, we combined 3 regional co-ops, Eastern Highland region, the North Central region, and the Southwest region. Those 3 regions have been combined into Region 1. They're under the leadership of Miss Michelle Lucy, and she's been working with the 3 cooperatives since July. of course, she discovered very quickly that each region had their own way of providing services. So she's been working very hard to streamline and to make consistent between the three areas how services are provided to our students. And that's an ongoing process. That, again, is a great example of a systems change that we continue to be engaged in, even while addressing the needs of our students during the pandemic. I have many other examples. I'm happy to share them with you at another time if you want to hear more. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Do any of the board members have any questions for Superintendent Reichman? Don't see any. Thank you, Superintendent Reichman, for your continued work in this period, both in readying the agency to handle COVID and the return to school next month, as well as some of the changes that you discussed, in particular the changing of the management of the co-ops. The next item on the agenda is 2.01 action item, approval of the consent agenda consistent with board policy. Items 3.01, 3.02, 4.02, 5.01, 7.02, and 7.03. Would any of the board members like to remove one of these items from the consent agenda? And I don't see any. One wanting to speak. Would anyone like to move to approve the consent agenda? I see Suke raising her hand.
I move we approve the consent agenda items 3.01, 3.02, 4.02, 5.01, 7.02, and 7.03.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second? Mike Manley?
This is Mike Manley, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. So all in favor to approve the consent agenda, you can turn on your video and make a sign of assent. So I have Suke, I'm voting yes. See, Suke is a yes, Mike Manley is a yes, Lynn is a yes, Mike Gordon is a yes, Linda Bova is a yes, Dean Howard is a yes, and Dr. Sims is a yes. All opposed? And there are none, so that carries. Thank you. Moving on, we are looking at 4.01 information item finance report from Sheena Cooper. Shana, are you on the call now?
Yes, I am, but it looks like I'm having some difficulties with my video.
Yes, I see. Well, you can proceed with voice as needed. I'll mute myself.
Okay. Shana Cooper, Executive Director of Business Services. Good afternoon, Board President Nigro, Superintendent Reichman, Assistant Superintendent Rutt, members of the board, and the ASDB community. Provided to each of you is a financial report that was presented to the Finance Committee based on data as of July 31, 2020. For comparative purposes, the reports also show data as of July 31, 2019. Our most recent Finance Committee meeting was held yesterday on September 6th with board members Manley and Gordon and Superintendent Reichman. The minutes of the meeting have been included with today's consent agenda items. In summary, we reviewed and discussed the budgetary and fiscal year budget to actual comparison reports, the available cash balance, the grant revenues and expenditures report, and reviewed student enrollment as of August 1st, 2020 and compared to August 1st, 2019. Before I begin summarizing the fiscal data, I would like to inform everyone that the agency's fiscal year 2022 budget submission package was successfully submitted to the Governor's Office of Strategic Planning and Budgeting last week. The submission comprised of our operating budget request totaling $59.2 million, federal funds grants information totaling $3.4 million, and the 5-year strategic plan. I would like to give kudos to the budget team as they have played a tremendous role in implementing new processes for budgeting across the agency, as well as utilizing financial methodologies to determine fiscal needs. The process also aided in the development and recent submission of our annual budget package to OSPB. Ongoing efforts will be made to analyze specific programs in order to improve both effectiveness and efficiencies, and I will continue to provide support as we develop our agency's strategic plan so we can ensure that our fiscal and operational resources are aligned with the plan. Now that the school year has started, now that the school year has started, our vouchering team, along with the campus and the regional cooperatives, working with the data registrars, have begun with the homeschool districts to begin vouchering our students so that we can in turn receive the associated revenues for our enrolled students. There have been a few hiccups, though, I must admit, due to the recent changes ABE has been made, but we are working through them, so hopefully we can start to receive those voucher revenues within the next few weeks. With several months into the COVID-19 pandemic, though, it still is difficult for me to really draw some conclusions about the potential impact to our operations for the year, especially since we are new into the school year. We're continuing to have everyone think about how to spend less and continuing to try to implement the cost-saving initiatives where we can look at other available sources to use. Unfortunately, a lot of COVID-19 related expenses have not qualified for reimbursement, as the federal government has been more focused on agencies that are more impacted by the pandemic, such as the hospitals, police, health and social services, etc. As such, though, our general fund has been impacted by these costs. In addition to monitoring our spend, we're also looking at our revenues, which is mostly tied to enrollment. If enrollment declines, then our revenues will also. But if our enrollment does increase, our revenues will increase. Since JLBC is still projecting a shortfall of $62 million for fiscal 2021, based on the June fiscal reports, there are possibilities that the agencies may see some reductions to our general fund appropriations to help offset the state's projected shortfall. JLBC and our OSPB staff have indicated that there are still a lot of questions and concerns about the revenue shortfall for the state for fiscal year 2021. Updates are expected in October. While we still continue to wait and get answers on what we don't know related to our finances, we will continue to focus on ensuring that the budget adequately funds our operations and meets the needs of the agency, to include developing the effective mitigation strategies as well as exploring new opportunities. Similar to last year, the budget was constructed with reserves to meet unforeseen contingencies and or anticipated opportunities that may arise throughout the school year. So those were just some informational items I wanted to give updates on. If there's no questions or comments at this point, I will just provide a brief summary on the financial reports that were provided to the Finance Committee as well as to you all previously to today. For comparative purposes, the reports also, as I mentioned before, do show data as of July 31, 2019. As referenced on page 1, as of August 1, 2020, there were 530.37 full-time equivalents that were filled and 76 vacant positions. As of August 1st, 2020, we had 2,117 students. This time last year, there were 2,054 students. So a little bit more last year at this time. We're still continuing to monitor enrollment for September, but you'll be able to see the details for the August 1st enrollment comparing both years on the bottom of pages 1 and 2 of the report. Page 3 begins the financial summary, and what I've done is just compare last year to prior year. Our collected revenues is $51,000 compared to $35,000 last year, which is a little bit about $86,000 primarily from the decline in the Medicaid, as well as the E-rate revenues that we've received thus far for 2021. Total expenditures have decreased though, slightly by about $91,000, mainly due to the decrease in payroll and other operating expenditures. Payroll has decreased slightly due to the decision to not pay employees for work performed for work not performed until the start of the school year. So that has helped a little bit as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Other operating expenses have also decreased due to the timing of our electricity payment. We didn't make that until August. Although expenditures are showing a slight decline from last year to this year, we do have some expenditures that were not originally budgeted for, as I mentioned before, for example, COVID-related items. But funding is being provided to respond to the pandemic, where we're ensuring, I believe Mr. Duff did indicate, we're ensuring PPE is provided, such as face coverings, humanity shields are being provided, as well as making sure that the needs and safety of our students, teachers, and staff are being met. This also includes improving the use of education technology and supporting the distance learning, similar to what Mr. Creasy has talked about. As illustrated on the budget status report on page 9, you can actually see, though, we are showing a deficit for budget fiscal year 2021. That deficit right now is showing $2.9 million when you compare actual revenues of $2.1 million. To the actual expenditures of $5 million. Again, what that really means, I've said it before, is that our fiscal year ends June 30, 2020. So we're having to use our available cash balance. Although this is not of any particular concern, because again, typical to the start of the fiscal and budget year, we don't begin receiving voucher revenues until mid to late September. So as I mentioned, it's very important that we receive those voucher revenues within the next couple of weeks. Last year at this time, we did have a deficit of 1.9. And remember, again, the budget fiscal year begins in July. So although the fiscal year begins in July, the school year begins in August, there's still payroll, as well as other operating expenditures that are continuously being incurred. As a result of that, though, I'm still continuing to closely monitor our cash balance, as well as making sure that we have available funding sources and that we're trying to use those other funding sources until we receive our revenues. We are working on preparing our August monthly updates based on a review of that preliminary financial data. There are no immediate material concerns based on what I do know, other than what I've indicated previously, where we'll continue to monitor our revenues, expenditures, and cash balances very closely, as well as monitoring student enrollment and identifying, hopefully, if there's no cuts to our general fund appropriations. We will continue to plan for uncertainty with budgeting prudence and ensure that our expenditures do not exceed our revenue sources. Any continued unforeseen needs or requirements created by the COVID-19 pandemic will require expenditure reductions across the agency to ensure fiscal solvency. If there are no questions on any of the information I presented, this really concludes my report for the agency's informational and fiscal data.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Cooper from any of the board members? And I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that report. And I know we'll be closely looking at this, especially as we look at the budget next year and see how the agency may have to adapt to, to the overall context of the state budget. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda then is going to be 7.01. That's information item, introduction and possible discussion of policies ACA, GBB, GCG, IHA, and KB. Maria Murphy. Ms. Murphy, if you are on the line, could you start your video and you may begin.
I am. Good afternoon, Board President Nigro, Superintendent Reichman, Dr. Rex, members of the board. My name is Maria Murphy. I'm the Director of Policy and Government Relations for ASDB. You have before you the red line revisions of the policies. I did not receive any concerns of the policies that were presented from any of the board members. They were posted to the public on the ASDB website. I did not receive any concerns in regards to the policies presented. And with that, I would like to make myself available for any questions at this time.
Okay, are there any board members that have questions for Ms. Murphy? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. As we move to the next item, 7.04, action item approval of strategic plan development work session dates for 2020. Superintendent Reichman.
Yes, just wanted you to consider an addition of a work study session for November 5th. At the last board meeting, you approved to have work study sessions on September 24th and October 1st. We're now adding one more for November 5th. So just present it to you, the board, to determine if you want to add another work study session.
Linda?
Yes, I am thinking about, one moment here, give me a moment. At the last work study session that we had, I found it to be kind of less effective than I had expected it to be, honestly. I was hoping it to be more collaborative and maybe have more of a discussion, allowing the board members to be involved and not like the board meeting sessions that we have here. So personally, I just felt that, I don't know, during a work study, I think the purpose of that, maybe we can change the purpose of that and maybe, have a different approach as far as the board meetings. There's a lot of new things going on. We have the pandemic and everything. There's a lot of responsibilities and things we need to take care of. So I think it's our responsibility just to make sure that we can make it a more collaborative and effective meeting. I'm not sure, maybe if we could have, a focus, a complete focus on a specific date. This is the interpreter. I need to clarify. We froze for one moment. What date did you say? Okay, so I'm just wondering if we could move the dates forward to January, just to give us some time to contemplate and to think and to see how things are going, and to know more about the situation as far as the pandemic. It would just give us more time to be prepared to be able to support the school and support the leadership team and all of that. I think it is critical, because we're talking about a plan for 5 years out. This is just an idea that I'm considering, and I wanted to put it out there so that maybe we could kind of push that forward. Time is getting quite close, and then we did approve that, but then we did have the pandemic, and we do need to think about those individual board members as well, and the school staff. They've been working so hard trying to take care of everything that's going on. All that we've heard tonight, I'm so impressed with the wonderful creativity and everything that they've all been doing, online learning and the like. So I think that we need to kind of pause and take a breath. And just that's what I was considering. And I'd like to put that out there for the board to consider.
Thank you, Linda. And I see that Mark has his hand up as well, but just to clarify, Linda, would you like us to propose that we move that next work study session from November out into January? Is that something that you'd like to see, and also have an agenda that's a little more open-ended than it was last time? Is that right?
Yes, let me clarify, and thank you for asking that question. I believe the next one is September 24th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right, we have the 24th, and then that's what we have left. The other ones that we have left in 2020, could we move them on to 2021? And that's what I'm proposing, because we don't have dates for 2021 yet, correct?
Correct. That's going to be our next agenda item for the regular board meetings, to discuss those dates.
Right. Okay. So I would like to move those 2 extra sessions out to 2021. I see that Mark does have something to say, so I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Yes. Dr. Sims?
I agree with Linda's sentiment that it was not very collaborative. I think either we need to go to what I would consider an unmuted situation. I think the refereeing actually prevents spontaneous conversation, which would be normally what you would get during a work study or one of those things. I don't think it was your intent, but it was almost like a meeting with you, David, like we were all talking to you rather than talking with each other. I think the other option, frankly, is for the people who are willing to go into a space and be socially distanced. There's enough space within the campus. And honestly, if the expectation is that the students return to campus, I don't think it would be unreasonable for the board to do the same with social distancing. I think we should keep those 2 dates. I think if the dates were more productive, I think people would be more excited about adding an extra date. But I did feel it was very restricted in terms of being able to have spontaneous conversation. And so I'm fine to keep the current dates, and if need be, we could add another. But I do think this is something that we need to move along, even though we do have the pandemic in terms of giving the overall feedback and getting a plan. Personally, that's my take on it.
Are there others that would like to talk about this? Lynn?
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment. I don't feel it was as productive as it could have been when we've been able to kind of feed off each other and come up with ideas and counterpoints. So a different structure, I think, would be good. And as Linda said, right now, there's so much thought, concentration, and effort on just making sure we're servicing students. We're obligated under our IEPs to make sure all that's done. And then to put an added thought into what do we do in 5 years? I think we're having a hard enough time figuring out what we're going to do tomorrow. Anyway, that's my thought.
Okay. Mike Gordon?
Yeah, I think if we're going to continue with the sessions, which I think we will in September, and doing them virtually, I think what Mark said also, it's really important that we stay unmuted and maybe even stay on video as we can, because that's what we do here at Savvy for most of our important meetings. We make sure everybody is unmuted, and that way you kind of can't, I don't want to say you hide behind your mute, but everybody is kind of feels free to be able to participate in real time, and you're not waiting for somebody to unmute to come in and say their part. And you can really, you can talk over each other if you have to, just like a regular meeting. It's not nearly as structured as raising your hand and coming in. It's more spontaneous, and if we're going to continue remotely, I think anything we can do to open it up and make it a little more free to participate would probably be to our benefit. I'll mute now.
Okay. Suke?
Well, I agree with most of the sentiment. My concern is that will not allow for the folks relying on the interpreter to participate as freely, because trying to bounce back and forth from who's talking and watching the interpreter and then having the interpreter identify who's speaking and that type of thing, I think that's going to really cause for some communication breakdown for those folks utilizing the interpreter. So I would like it to be more, free flowing, but I think we need to be conscious of that. And so in that way, I would agree if we had the ability to be in a location where we were social distancing, that might be a more accessible option.
Thank you, Suke. And Linda, I see that you would like to speak.
Yes, I'd like to add to what Suke had just mentioned. You're right. I mean, with overlapping of conversation, I do depend on an interpreter, and it may be one or two of us that definitely depend on that. And we don't want to be behind, as far. We want to be able to keep up with the information. I understand, definitely it would be great to be able to be spontaneous, but I think in person would be best if we have that type of structure. I would be able to see who is speaking, and it would definitely be more visual for me as well. It's tough here on this online platform. So I think maybe for the next meeting, are we thinking about possibly being in person? Of course, social distancing as well, so that we can, have that open discussion. So for the next meeting, it's the 24th. How do y'all feel about meeting in person? Annette, is it possible that we could do that?
Yes, we can do that. We can set up a room that would be large enough to allow for in-person interaction and social distancing at the same time. You may have to limit the number of visitors so that we can maintain the social distancing.
Okay. Are there others who would like to speak now? And I don't see any. Dr. Sims, the Zoom format obviously is not ideal. I think one of the reasons we have the kind of refereeing part of it is, one, the platform, and two, the people who use the interpreter. So I agree that being in a room together is much better. I think that based on the various benchmarks that Maricopa County has been meeting in recent weeks, seem to suggest that us meeting in a room and being socially distant would be feasible, and I think we can do that. And that's for the meeting on the 24th. So I don't think we need a board action to set the time and place right now for the 24th. But I think what we are looking for now are at least one thing to make sure to see if we can get some guidance on when the next two sessions, the October 1st and the November 5th session, are going to be. We're hearing that some board members may want to move those into early next year, and if there's discussion on that. So, Dr. Sims.
I would suggest that you schedule them as they are on the agenda, and if after the next one people find they're not fruitful, then we can push them into the following year. I think some of the desire to move them was maybe based on the fact that they didn't think they got much out of the last one. So there's no reason that if you commit to these and the one that happens on the 24th happens and it's not productive, that people could say, let's pull the plug and not get together the other two times.
Okay, Linda.
Yes, I absolutely support what Dr. Sims just mentioned. Yeah, I think we go meeting by meeting and see how everything goes and see how we can improve that communication. And then we'll talk about the next one and kind of move from there. But I think that's a good idea. I think it's excellent. I support that.
Lynn?
I agree.
Okay. Are there others that would like to speak on this?
I have a motion to approve the schedule on the agenda.
Second. Okay. All in favor of approving the agenda as proposed? Say aye. I see Suke, Mike Manley, Mike Gordon, Lynn, Linda, and Dr. Sims and myself are all, and Dean are all approving. All opposed? None. Okay. So that is complete. The next item, 705, discussion possible action item, set the calendar for the 2021 regular board meetings. We have a proposed calendar here. Do any of these dates not work for any of you? Lynn, would you like to speak?
No, I'm
oh, okay.
there.
All right, Suke.
So am I to assume that we are continuing in our positions, because I'm really attached to the ACDHH?
Mm-hmm. I think for now, I mean, there are, for the entire year, we've had 3 board members that have been serving, whose terms are expired, but are serving under the statutory provision that allow them to keep their seats until the governor appoints new people to those seats or reappoints them to those seats. So, and as of now, the governor hasn't done that. I've reached out since COVID, but there hasn't been any movement from the governor's office in that regard. So I think for now, we should all assume that the folks that are serving on those expired terms are here until they're not, until the governor either makes a reappointment or some other change.
I will go with that answer. I only have one conflict, and that's the July 15th. I have another wedding.
Okay. So I actually don't, the March 11th one, I'd like to move probably a week before, if that's possible. So let me get my calendar out. If that work. If we can go to March 4th is probably better for me. And then does anyone else have an issue with July 15th? We could do July 8th or July 22nd.
David.
Yes. Hi, Mike.
If I'm looking at the right one, the November one is on November 11th, which is Veterans Day.
Yeah, I do see that. Maybe November 4th might be a better day, or the 18th.
I say one of those two. Yeah.
Yeah, probably the 4th might be a little bit better.
David, the other thing to consider is, do people want to go to some of the, to Yuma or Flagstaff?
That is right. I know that, in the past we've been to Flagstaff and we've been to Yuma. I think we moved away from that because our attendance wasn't as good for those meetings as it is when they're in Phoenix or Tucson. That's why we've been meeting in Phoenix and Tucson the last 2 or 3 years. But nevertheless, that is an option.
I think the ability to attend remotely has made that much better. So some of that was because you either showed up or you're kind of telephonic or not at all. I think at Flag, it was not telephonic even, or it was difficult. So I think the remote attendance has gotten better, but I don't disagree with you that attendance went down.
Yeah, the in-person attendance, I mean, through technology like this, we can meet and that's helpful, but, there are some limitations to it. I would still expect everyone to attend, in person or telephonically, but I always try to have as many people in person as we can. Again, that's my preference. I don't know if that's shared with others, but. So in terms of these dates, can we tentatively say March 4th, let's see. We say March 4th and then November 4th. July, perhaps we move that back to July 22nd. Okay. All right. So I think if we have those dates clear, is there anyone that would like to move one or more of these meetings to a place that's other than Phoenix or Tucson? Suke?
No.
Oh, no. Linda?
Oh, sorry, I was looking for the interpreter. Okay, I actually, from here on out, I would prefer to either do Phoenix or Tucson as well. That's my choice. Maybe sometime in the future, maybe, if necessary, but we are able to change it later throughout the year, right? Locations.
Yeah, we certainly can. I mean, I think we need the time. If we were to change it, we need time for the staff to, prepare for the, for the production. So we could do it probably at least one board meeting ahead. I wouldn't want to do it much more than that. But in the past, I think we've had the, for obvious reasons, we've had the Flagstaff because it's a bit cooler up there. I think the fall meeting, if I recall, was in Yuma. That was a number of years ago. I forget.
And I think that, the purpose of having it at a Flagstaff or Yuma would be so that people would physically be there for the meeting. And if people are still going to be doing it telephonically or virtually, then it kind of, to me, it kind of defeats the purpose of saying we're going to be in Flagstaff and none of us are in Flagstaff. So.
Yeah, that's certainly a concern. If we were talking about the January or March meeting, I'd be more concerned. If we were to schedule the July one for Flagstaff, I hope that we can all be together and have the public, there in person, or at least have it open in person in July of next year. That could be wishful thinking on my part, but. And again, as Linda had mentioned, we could always change it. I mean, that's many months away. We can change that if we need to. Okay, so if that's the case, if there's no other discussion about tentative locations or dates, then I would like to move that we accept the revised schedule. So that's March 4th. That's as produced, but with the exception of March 4th, July 22nd, and November 4th, and moving the July 22nd meeting to Flagstaff. And again, we can always change these locations as conditions permit or don't permit. Depending on COVID and other things. So if that, so I would like to make a motion to adopt that schedule. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. All in favor? So I see Sue Kay saying yes, Mike Manley saying yes, Lynn Davidson saying yes, Dean saying yes, Mark saying yes, and Linda saying yes. And all opposed? Mike, are you abstaining? Or you voted yes? Okay. All right. So let's set that for the schedule. I hope that again that the work study session I think that we can do with social distancing. The regular board meetings will continue to take a look at data on as we come up to those meetings. And make a decision as to whether or not we think we can safely do an in-person meeting. I'd like to say that I hope that we get our next board meeting in person, perhaps with some guidelines or some distancing in place. But we're always looking at the data and the benchmarks to make that decision. Okay. Moving on, 801, call to the public. On non-agendized items, again, we set up an email address for the purposes of receiving these comments. We did not receive any by the deadline, so we are going to move on to, the discussion item for the next regular board meeting, 8.02 discussion item, agenda items for the next regular board meeting scheduled for December 3rd, 2020. Are there any specific agenda items that the board members would like to see on the next meeting agenda?
David, this is Mark Sims. My comment would be more about us getting the type of update we got today from the staff in the interim, right? In other words, we're looking at 3 months, which I think is fine, but getting maybe a report, and it doesn't have to be a lot of work, like them just sitting down and cutting a video and sending us a video about how opening up went and what are the challenges, just to kind of keep the board apprised. I don't want them to have to do a lot of work to do a formal document, but it'd be really nice to just let us know. And actually, I think it would help the public.
So I'm sorry, Mark, to be clear, you want an update from staff members on how the reopening has been proceeding?
Well, like similar to what we got today from all the staff members. I mean, actually, even what they did today could be done on video and sent to us before the meeting, but in the interim, doing that as well might be helpful.
Okay. Are there any other comments?
This is Linda. I just wanted to clarify, when you're speaking of a video, are you talking about what staff and students, et cetera, are doing for the reopening and we watch that prior to the meeting? Or is this some kind of, can you clarify what you're looking for in the video? A little bit not clear with that.
Sure, it was similar to the reports that we got today. Not all of them, but you know, I'm not as concerned about the HEPA filters on a regular basis. But for instance, the reports that Lynn gave, Outreach gave, Birth to 3, and the principals gave, they're all telling us which students are and aren't coming in and things like that. That's kind of changing very quickly. So it'd be nice to know after the open in October sometime, or it could be added on to the agenda of the work study, but getting some sort of update.
Okay, so, and this is through video before the board meeting. So I see what the objectives would be as far as an updates, something more consistent through video and sent to us so that we can view that prior to the board meeting rather than reading it in paper form or English form, correct?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay, understood. Just wanted to make sure that Annette and David, we were all on the same page. Okay, thank you.
Are there any others? Seeing none, we can move on to item 9.01, action item adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Lynn?
I move we adjourn this board meeting.
And a second?
Linda.
Linda is seconding.
Yeah.
So all in favor?
Yes, I second.
I see that we're all saying, we're all showing assent. All opposed? All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate your time and the effort of the staff. Thank you again, board members, and have a good night.
Thank you, David. Thanks, Annette.
Thanks, David. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Later.
Nice job, Jay.